KIDO Talk Radio, our great friend Lars Larson joining us from the Lars Larson program. Catch him weekday nights right after Sean Hannity, 6 to 9. Lars, I've got a few issues with you. I hope you're fired up today.
Oh, I'm ready to go, Kevin. What's up?
You're always fired up. That's what we love about you. What's going on with your governor there in Oregon?
Our governor is crazy. Where can we start? Number one, she comes out. She hasn't even been asked to send National Guard troops. But she says, if asked, I will refuse to do it. And she stakes out some territory. She's now been followed by a couple of governors, including, believe it or not, the Republican governor of Nevada, Brian Sandoval, who says he won't send National Guard troops. And get this, he says, because he doesn't think that using the National Guard to guard the nation's borders is appropriate use of the Guard. Now, figure out that one and try and wrap your head around that one. Then you've got Kate Brown, who signed a billion-dollar tax increase on small business because the Congress had reduced federal taxes in the tax bill that passed just before Christmas, and Oregon years ago had hooked its tax system to the Fed. So every time the Congress would raise taxes, Oregon's taxes would go up without lawmakers having to vote on it and expose themselves to any kind of criticism. So they liked it when they were hooked to the wagon that was going up. And as soon as the wagon starts going down, they say, oh, no, we want to disconnect. So they did that. I mean, she's pulling all kinds of crazy nonsense. But the stuff on the National Guard is outrageous. First of all, she wasn't asked for National Guard troops. Secondly, if she were asked and the president insisted under Title X, he can overrule her. But I'm sure that she would probably want him to be forced to overrule her to get National Guard troops. Thank goodness we've got Arizona, we've got Texas. We've got a number of other states have said that they will supply National Guard troops.
Lars Larson joining us, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. What else is she like? She's made some controversial statements in the past, but Lars, as you pointed out, I mean, she's looking to pick a fight, it seems.
She is, because she's running for re-election. She took over from a disgraced former governor, John Kitzhaber, who was forced to resign. Well, he made the decision to resign 1 month after his inauguration for a historic fourth term in office because that governor allowed his girlfriend to run an office, a business, a for-profit business, literally out of the governor's office. He forced his staff to acknowledge her as a public official, which she was not. And then when they got caught, because she was peddling influence, she was getting, well, in the end, she got a couple of $100,000 from left-wing groups who wanted the governor's ear. And apparently they got to the governor's ear through the governor's girlfriend. If you want to draw a diagram on that, it's pretty unseemly. But he was forced to resign. Kate Brown took over. She didn't fix any of the ethical holes that allowed that problem to happen, and now she's desperate to get reelected. I've talked to her in person a couple of times, but never on the air. Last year, my producer and I were on an airplane flight with her, a commercial flight, and we were all sitting in coach, but I saw her at the waiting area, and I walked up to her and said, Governor, I'd like you to come on the program and just answer a few questions. And she was nice and pleasant to speak to, but she will not answer questions. And, in fact, she rarely talks to the local media. I've had friends who work at the TV stations and the newspaper who say that she is very guarded about giving any comments to anyone. Now, that's not the kind of governor you need. Every governor, whether they're liberal or conservative, should be willing to talk about public issues, especially with those people who have critical questions. I mean, if all you want to do is take softballs, you should stay out of politics.
Lars Larson joining us. He knows all about politics here at KIDO Talk Radio. Lars, what I love about your show is the eclectic nature. 1 minute you're talking to Dennis Miller. The next minute you're talking to a deputy press secretary from the White House. How do you determine your topics?
Well, I like to talk about what's going on in the world, and we build every single day's show. Folks will say, well, could you just let me know or let us know on your website what you're going to be talking about next week on Monday? And I say we do very little of that planning ahead. Now, there are some kinds of interviews, like interviews with the president, that have to be worked on for a good long time. But we'd rather build every day's show out of what is going on that day, because it would actually be a whole lot easier for my producers and for me if we said, okay, next Monday we're going to have these interviews all stacked up. We're not going to pay any attention to what's going on that day in the world, but we're going to plan. Now, and there's a value to interviews like that because you're still talking about fun and important things, but it's much better if you say what's going on in the news today and how do we respond. So, for instance, yesterday the news came down right in the middle of the Northwest show that the FBI had raided the offices of Michael Cohen, who is Donald Trump's personal attorney, dating back to the time before he was a candidate for president. And I said, we have to get somebody on about this. So we called one of my favorite criminal defense attorneys, a guy I don't agree with all the time, but we've been friends for a long time, not because he's ever represented me, but he's a very good criminal defense attorney. I've never needed one. But I call him so that I can say, is this legal? And what does it take to justify the FBI raiding the offices of the president's personal attorney? Because, as you know, one of the best protections we have that's in the Constitution is that if one of your listeners listening this morning, say, is accused of a crime tomorrow, and he or she decides to go to an attorney and say to the attorney, let me tell you what happened and let me tell you what they're accusing me of, and then you can tell me how I can defend myself, that conversation and everything you tell your attorney is called attorney-client privilege. Now, people think this is some cheap trick. It is not a cheap trick. It is not a loophole. It is a constitutional protection because, as you know, Kevin, if you go to your doctor because something's troubling you, your doctor needs to ask you some fairly invasive questions. I mean, he may ask you about your bathroom habits. He may ask you about, well, when you spit up, when I go to the doctor because I've got the flu, he says, was your mucus green or clear? And literally that's grotesque to think about, but it helps him diagnose what's wrong. If you go to an attorney and you have to think, well, maybe the police will force my attorney to tell them what I've told my attorney, you won't be able to speak to your attorney about things and help that attorney know how to defend you. How could an attorney defend you if he can't know what you know? And if you can't tell him that, you can't adequately defend yourself. Now, remember, the folks who wrote the Constitution had been under a king. The king could say, call that man or woman in front of me, and the king could simply say, you're guilty, and send you off to the dungeon. We, our founders of this country, who were geniuses, said, we can't let that happen. So when the replacement for the king, a representative government, was given some powers, we have to have law enforcement, we have to have national security, we said, but individual American citizens still have a right to a defense. And that means you have to be able to talk to your lawyer, and everything you tell your lawyer, unless you're telling your lawyer about a crime you are going to commit or an ongoing crime. And here's an example of that. Let's say you've been involved in, you're accused of abusing your children, beating your children. If you're accused of that, you can tell your attorney. If you say, and I'm going home tonight and I'm going to beat those kids again, your attorney is actually obligated to call the police and say, my client has communicated to me that he's going to go home and hurt his family. Now, the attorney can tell the police about a crime you are planning to commit. But if you walk into your attorney literally and say, yesterday I killed a man, and I'm afraid the police are going to come after me, I know they're going to charge me, and I need to defend myself, you can tell your attorney that you did the deed, and the attorney cannot tell anyone about that. In fact, even the fact that you're consulting an attorney is itself a secret. So if I call an attorney's office and say, are you representing Kevin Miller? Their absolute legal requirement, ethical requirement is say, we can't tell you whether we're representing Mr. Miller or not. We can't tell you if he's talked to us or if he's accused of a crime or if he's using one of our attorneys. That is your confidential information. Yesterday, the FBI raided the president's attorney's office, and I don't think anybody in this country who's following this thinks any differently than this, Kevin. They are going to go after Michael Cohen, the attorney, and they're hoping to roll him over, as the police say, so that he will tell Robert Mueller's investigators something that Mueller can use to get charges brought against President Trump. This is an effort to take down the President of the United States. It is nothing more than a coup dressed up in the color of law.
Our great friend Lars Larson joining us here. Listen to Weeknight 6 to 9 on KIDO Talk Radio. You've met the president. You've interviewed him. You know all these folks in the White House. Are we in unprecedented territory, at least in modern history? You've got the libs, Lars, saying, well, this is White House all over again. You've been there. You've covered the stories. What do you think?
I think what's going on is that there are people who are unhappy with the results of the election. And God bless them. Everybody, in any one election, Kevin, somebody's going to end up unhappy. When the next governor's race happens in Idaho, someone, the losing side, is going to be unhappy. But most of us act like adults, and we say, well, our guy or our gal didn't win this time. We will try harder next time, and we'll see what we can do. In this case, there was talk on the day after Donald Trump's election, we will sabotage his inauguration. We will make sure that he never takes office. If he gets into office, we will see if we can impeach him. They were ready to remove the choice of the American voters, and he was, remind people of this, he was the choice of the American voters. Now, you can nickel-dime around the edges about, well, I don't like the Electoral College, and I don't like the primary system, and I don't like the way we cast ballots. We vote at the polls or we vote through mail. You can say you're unhappy with all that, but this is the system by which we choose leaders for the single most powerful country and the single most liberty-loving country in the world. And I think you've heard various famous people make comments to this effect. It may not be a perfect system. In fact, we know it's not a perfect system, but it's the best system human beings have ever found. And if anybody thinks otherwise, tell me a better system. I mean, even in Great Britain, which was our parent country, you know, we look at them and we have respect for them and we admire them, and they're very culturally similar to us. But Brits do not begin to have the constitutional protections from the government that we have here. They do not have full First Amendment rights. They don't have any Second Amendment rights. They don't necessarily have the same Fourth Amendment rights against search and seizure that we have, or the self-incrimination rights that we have. So even a country as culturally similar as Great Britain, which has still, you know, a king and a queen and all that stuff, that Americans decided we don't want any part of that king-queen stuff. We don't like that. We don't want a monarch. We want a government that is of us, for us, and by us, and it shall represent us. And by the way, we're putting the Second Amendment in there just in case we end up with a tyrannical government, because we've seen tyrannical governments before, and the government best be on notice that if we decide you have become a tyrannical government, that we have the power as the citizens of this country to take it back, and we've done it before and we'll do it again. Now, people think, well, that's silly, Lars. You're talking about an uprising. Well, tell me if this is a tyrannical government when the FBI raids the offices of a lawyer and violates attorney-client privilege. Even liberals like Alan Dershowitz think that was terrible. Think if it's a tyrannical government when you can weaponize the FBI, weaponize the IRS, weaponize the DOJ, even weaponize the EPA, telling people in Idaho, and there was a couple in Idaho, who were told the EPA now has the right to take your land and say you can't build a house on it because there's a wet spot in the middle of that land, and that is part of the waters of the United States. I'm talking about real things, not conspiracy theories or anything like that. I'm talking about real abuses of individual American citizens in the case of that EPA example I gave you, or in the case of the IRS being used to shut down the free speech of Americans prior to the 2012 election. I'm talking about violating the First Amendment constitutional rights to free speech of literally millions of people because the IRS under Obama said we're not going to approve your nonprofit status for your political group, which is essential to be able to run a political group. You cannot run a political group without complying with the IRS regs, and if the IRS says we're just simply going to pick conservative groups and not give them approval, you're denying millions of people the right to free speech. Is that a tyrannical government?
It was under President Obama.
Yes, it was. And I think we are better off with a government that is constantly reminded the citizens have the right to take their government back if you folks get out of line. Not just at the ballot box, but elsewhere. And again, I visited with Sharon Angle, who I've known for a lot of years down in Reno because I gave a speech over the weekend. I was there to speak to the Washoe County GOP, and I saw Sharon Angle, and I was joking with her. I said, I ruined your campaign because we had gotten into a conversation just like this one on the air years ago when she was running against Dirty Harry Reid. And we were talking about the reason for the Second Amendment is to guard against a tyrannical government. It's not for hunting. It's not even for self-protection. It is for protection against a tyrannical government. And she talked about that on the air, and there were a lot of folks who used that against her. It was kind of a turning point in the campaign, unfortunately, because a lot of people didn't appreciate that kind of speech, even though it's absolutely accurate, Kevin. It's the kind of thing that people need to remind their government. you serve us, not the other way around. And too many governments, not so much the government of the state of Idaho, but too many governments have decided that the people shall serve the government, and that whatever the government decides it needs, we will be the servants who supply that need. That is not the relationship that Americans have ever had with their government. They have always said, you serve us. And when we decided that you've outlived your usefulness, we will send you off to pasture and put somebody new in place. And we get a chance to do that every couple of years with the House, every 3 years with the Senate, and every 4 years with the President. And I think this President is serving the American public, but the deep state in Washington, D.C. has decided we are going to remove this guy. And I've always thought when I saw coups happening in foreign countries, and usually a coup is a military uprising led by a bunch of guys who've got a bunch of folks following them armed with AK-47s, and they storm the palace and execute the current head of state, and they put their own guy or gal in his place. That's how it happens there. And we always look at places like Cuba and laugh at their election. Oh, yeah, Castro got a majority. Wow, what a surprise. Or Putin got a majority. What a surprise. And been proud that this country doesn't operate that way. Well, we are watching right now a president where there was an attempt to take him down as a candidate, and the attempt was using the resources of the FBI to wiretap Carter Page, a member of Trump's campaign, using a made-up piece of information called the Steele dossier. And you think about the implications of that we could end up with a government where the public has very little say about who ends up as the next president, because whoever's in power can use the elements of government against whoever's running against, their choice. In this case, it was Hillary Clinton that the deep state wanted in there and that the Democrat Party wanted in there. And President Obama turned the resources of government, including the FBI, the NSA, wiretapping, really frightening kinds of things. Imagine what you could do in the next Idaho Senate race or governor's race if you could wiretap people from the opposition campaign and find out information to use against them.
Our great friend Lars Larson. Lars, we can't wait to hear what you have to say tonight. Thank you for making time for us, sir.
It's always my pleasure, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Lars, have a great day.
Bye-bye.
And there we have it, our friend Lars Larson. Our time is 6:23. By the way, I was so excited to talk to Lars, I forgot, a little late with the cash code today. Remember, listen at 6:05, 8:05, and 3:05 with Sean Hannity afternoons and Kevin Miller mornings for your chance to win up to $5,000 on KIDO Talk Radio. Today, easy one, kids. The password is kids, or the code word is kids. And log on right now, KIDO Talk Radio. The more words you get, the higher the probability, the higher your chances are of winning up to $5,000 on KIDO Talk Radio. Hey, plus to be part of your day, Kevin Miller in the morning. Remember, coming up Thursday, that is tomorrow, Promote Our Schools, Secure Our Future. We're at Meridian Technical Charter School this Thursday, brought to you by CapEd Credit Union and Team Mazda Subaru. And as a special thank you, I'm actually putting this together right now. We've got a huge thank you Thursday for you. We've got Massage Envy. You can win an hour massage just by listening to Kevin Miller in the morning, and a prize pack from the Idaho Lottery. And you're going to love this. It's car wash season, a free car wash from UltraTouch. That's all for just listening to us tomorrow morning, live from Meridian Technical Charter Schools and, our Thank You Thursdays. Speaking of which, a lot going on today. Now, many of you may not be following Twitter, but the President of the United States is making that social media something relevant, something newsworthy outside of just the media elite. He's going after Russia big time, saying that the missiles are coming. They're going to be new. Only Donald Trump would be selling this, the new smart missiles, and Russia better back down. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but really the president did say this, and that Assad, the person that gasses little kids, will pay. More on that in a minute. Our time is 6:28. Traffic and... here I thought Larry Gebert was coming back, but apparently Jim is with us. So, again, Jim in for Larry Gebert with our news partners, Channel 7. Phone numbers here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So coming up, we're going to take a look at what happened yesterday in Congress concerning Facebook and whether or not you believe that Facebook should be impartial. You'll hear from Ted Cruz grilling Mark Zuckerberg. We'll take your calls at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And a young man by the name of Ben wants to share a unique theory about Tower 7. Yes, all that before 7 a.m. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. And Kevin Miller in the morning here. I do want to remind you today at Expo Idaho, it is Car Wars. Over 1,000 new and pre-owned vehicles, boats, and RVs for sale at Expo Idaho. I'll be at Bronco Motors today. Stop by and see me. I've got over 50 tickets to the Boise Music Festival. By the way, we will be announcing the lineup tomorrow for the Boise Music Festival, but over 50 tickets can be yours. Stop by and see me, Bronco Motors, today for Car Wars at Expo Idaho. Joining us now, I guess we'd call it Facebook Wars yesterday, in the Senate is our own Rachel Sutherland from Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Rachel.
Hey, good morning, Kevin.
So there I was watching the Senate hearing back and forth between Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg and everyone else, and I'm thinking, when are we going to have the social media moment, the social network movement, just like the movie?
Well, it was something out of a movie. He had to go before nearly half of the U.S. Senate just 14 years after creating this product in his dorm room. I imagine it was pretty surreal for Mark Zuckerberg. Actually, the senators themselves seemed befuddled by the way that Facebook works. I almost expected one of them to say, hey, while we have you here, could you help me with my settings? They were quite amazed. And Zuckerberg did explain how advertising works on the site, and he did apologize for the way that Cambridge Analytica went farther than it was supposed to in gathering information and data of Facebook users. And he said that the Facebook is actually doing an audit of all these apps that access the site, and apparently there are thousands of them. I didn't know that. And he said if they're found to be up to no good, that they'll get kicked off the site.
Indeed, of course, I really liked Senator Graham's thing. Well, if I buy a Ford and it doesn't work, then I'm going to go buy a Chevy. And when he was talking to Mark Zuckerberg about who is Facebook's competitor.
Right. He was asking if Facebook is a monopoly, and I couldn't help but think of MySpace. I don't know if they're still in existence. And Zuckerberg did seem a bit caught off guard by that line of questioning. But at the same time, Facebook is a very unique product. I don't know if there's anybody in the market challenging Facebook. I don't know if that means that makes Facebook a monopoly, or if anyone just, like a startup, thinks I have no chance at ever, tackling what Facebook does.
Well, and you could see he was in a conundrum, because if he admitted there was competition, that would be tough for him. But he didn't want to admit that Facebook was a monopoly. Again, we all have age differences, and Rachel, you work with these guys all the time. It was interesting seeing these senators from a different generation dealing with the young Zuck yesterday. Did anything get accomplished?
Yeah. I think possibly. I think that definitely they wanted Zuckerberg there. He was pretty much the most wanted man in Washington after the whole Cambridge Analytica thing broke. And for a long time, lawmakers have wanted to question the man himself. Usually Facebook will send representatives and executives. So to see him there was quite a profound moment. I mean, to most of us, he's this sort of hermit-type figure, because he doesn't generally go out in front of the media. He's uncomfortable in that situation. But yesterday, he did do that. So I think that was something that was, if you will, accomplished. He goes back this morning before a House committee, and I think there's some 54 representatives that will be there. So, again, this could be a very long day. We're talking 4 to 5 hours yet again. I don't know what could be unsurfaced today that they couldn't have found out yesterday, but House lawmakers want a piece of them as well.
Well, and finally, Senator Cruz seemed to enjoy his time with him yesterday, asking about the political leanings and the censorship of conservatives.
That's right. Yeah, we know about the whole Diamond and Silk thing, saying that they were silenced. They're the two ladies who backed President Trump. They were definitely targeted. Now, Facebook says what Zuckerberg said, and I thought was interesting. He said, Silicon Valley is a very liberal place, but he said that they work for Facebook to be an open marketplace of ideas, and they don't want to censor political information. So there's that. I mean, you can take it at face value or not, but says that they don't work to suppress conservative voices. But while he did say, hey, the place that we work at, the types of folks that are around here are generally more liberal.
No, it's interesting. I just know the callers of this program would most likely disagree with that statement. But it's between that and the president saying, "Get ready, Syria! Here comes the missiles," and the missiles are really, really smart. Not the dumb missiles, but
well, thank goodness that someone's sending their best. I mean, we don't want to send the missiles that are going to miss or anything. What we should be hearing from the White House, I would think, shortly, or something will just happen. That there'll be some kind of retaliation for this gas attack. But yeah, the president really going hard on Twitter this morning, not just on Syria, but on Russia as well.
You know, somewhere I think if Mark Zuckerberg would have known that Donald Trump would be promoting Twitter so much, he might have bought them like he bought Instagram.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Rachel, we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Rachel Sutherland joining us. So the big day yesterday, and this is something that, many people say, well, Kevin, your audience, the Miller militia, they're not very tech savvy. I would disagree. I think Facebook is a potent political tool, a potent weapon, and I don't know whether it's been Tom Munns or other folks. My friend Bill LeMay, who now does, I think he's back in Wisconsin doing some radio. You remember Bill LeMay, the young gun conservative talk show host from Raleigh, North Carolina. It's been a while since we've had Bill LeMay on. You make a good point. We should get him on. And he's doing a show exclusively on Facebook. And it's marvelous when you see some of these people, and it doesn't take much to do. You just sit in front of a screen, and if you're comfortable looking at yourself and having people comment, then you get a ton of views. By the way, all Facebook is just imitating what KIDO Talk Radio has been doing for years and years, what Sean Hannity, what Glenn Beck, what Lars Larson has been doing, talking politics. And conservatives will say that they have been censored, and I would agree with that. I've had many of my friends kicked off Facebook because of this. So anyway, let's get to it. Before we hear from Ted Cruz and others that made Mark Zuckerberg squirm, here is the Miller Morning Montage.
I started Facebook. I run it. And I'm responsible for what happens here.
If you and other social media companies do not get your act in order, none of us are going to have any privacy anymore.
There's a very common misperception about Facebook that we sell data to advertisers. And we do not sell data to advertisers.
Has there ever been a breach of Facebook data?
I don't believe that there's been a breach of data that we are aware of.
Has there ever been a hack?
Yes.
And have those hacks accessed user data?
I don't believe so.
If you've messaged anybody this week, would you share with us the names of the people you've messaged?
Senator, no, I would probably not choose to do that publicly here.
What kind of question is that? And here's another one. These senators, God bless them, but they have people to tweet. They have people to Facebook. They have people to Instagram. They're not doing these things. In fact, it was interesting hearing one of the senators speak to Mark Zuckerberg yesterday about Instagram and Facebook and everything else.
I think that may be what this is all about.
Your user agreement sucks.
I believe deeply in what we're doing. And I know that when we address these challenges, we'll look back and view helping people connect and giving more people a voice as a positive force in the world.
All right, that is our story that we're talking about, number one. Number two, Donald Trump has warned Putin missiles coming, and if you try to shoot down our missiles, even more missiles will be coming. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. But getting back to this yesterday, you have Mark Zuckerberg appearing before these people, and he was doing the Texas shuffle, if you will. Let's take a listen.
Happy to have my team follow up with you on more information if that would be helpful. Senator, I have not heard that. Mr. Chairman, I will have my team follow up with you on what information we have. Senator, I don't know. I do not know. We can follow up.
Okay, do that.
I can certainly have my team get back to you on any specifics there that I don't know sitting here today. I'm not, but let me just...
How about MoveOn.org?
Sorry? I'm not familiar with those specific cases.
Will you find out the answer and get back to me?
I'll have my team get back to you. I'm not specifically aware of those.
How about any Democratic candidate for office?
I am not familiar with those pieces of content specifically. I want to have my team follow up with you on that afterwards. Senator, I want to make sure I get this accurate, so it would probably be better to have my team follow up.
By the way, you're listening to Mark Zuckerberg. This is a montage put together by the Daily Caller. He doesn't know. He doesn't know. My team will get back to you, Senator.
I don't know.
I'm not sure the answer to that question.
Really?
Yes. Senator, I don't know that we've had specific conversations around that. Senator, I'm not actually sure I understand this enough to speak to that specific point. I'm not specifically aware. I mean, I'm not sure. Senator, I look forward to having my team follow up to flesh out the details of it. Senator, I do not know that. I do not know. We can follow up.
Okay, do that.
I'm not familiar with those specific
Oh,
cases.
you?
I don't know when we changed it. It sounds difficult to me. All of these things, like you're saying, are difficult. I don't know without having worked on it or thinking about it.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I do not.
580-5436, 580-KIDO. When you look at Facebook, when you look at social media, is there any doubt in your mind that it's not biased, that it doesn't have an agenda? And by the way, the Congress can huff and puff, but isn't this the same Congress that gave us the omnibus spending bill? Isn't this the same Congress that promises us one thing and does another? Isn't this the same Congress that continues to say, hey, trust us, everybody? Isn't this the same Congress that now is threatening the president? Tell you about that next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Kevin Miller in the morning. Blessed to be a part of your day. Don't forget, tomorrow we're at Meridian Technical Charter School in Meridian, brought to you by CapEd Credit Union and Team Mazda Subaru. And speaking of education, here's a great deal for you. Power Your Education, brought to you by Grade Power Learning in Meridian. This is where you can win a 50-hour custom learning package when we're talking ACT, SAT prep, or if you're like me, you have a problem with the English language, they can help you or your kid, most notably your kid, with history, math, great tutoring, great study skills. Go to KIDOTalkRadio.com to learn the details. All you have to do, write a 100-word essay on why education is important to you. That is brought to you by Grade Power Learning in Meridian. Check them out today, and really awesome deal. It doesn't cost you anything, and, you know, a 100-word essay, you submit it, and then we'll pick a winner. By the way, speaking of today's Miller's Mailbag, our friend Ben, who's too shy to call, said, Kevin, would you give me a chance to say something that you're really not talking about here? Okay, this is Ben's got some information. And, you know, sometimes we like to do a throwback, and we always love giving you a voice. That's what we do each and every morning. So this is from Ben in Boise. Even the staunchest believer of the official story cannot come up with an answer for why this makes no sense. He's talking about September 11th. And by the way, I'm one of the staunchest believers in the official story. As you recall, first local show in America outside New York to broadcast from Ground Zero. Then you had Glenn Beck and others follow what we did there back in the day and, you know, have people come in and really sort through that terrible tragedy. So this is what Ben has said. Number one, all 47 stories of Building 7 collapsed all at once in a total freefall. By the way, he's talking about Ground Zero, and this sounds more like what pro-life would say as well. Number two, not one drop of jet fuel was in the building or on Building 7 to exacerbate the small fires it had. Little to no debris hit Building 7, and it was in incredible shape when it collapsed. The official story, and remember, you have a lot of people that say that there was some type of internal demolition there. The official story for the cause of the collapse was structure fires. But even if every one of the millions and millions of square feet of the building were a raging inferno, it would still not have collapsed. They are designed to be able to withstand incredible fires. Well, you know, you can talk about designs, but we saw that what happened with the Twin Towers as well. 4B, the fires that collapsed the building were tiny, consuming less than 1% of the building, yet every square inch of the building collapsed in free fall at the same time. Any logical person who sees the videos and the facts would know there no doubt at all that if nothing else, the official story is a horrendous lie. I don't claim to know what actually happened that day, Kevin. You actually do know, but I do know the official story is totally a lie. And by the way, this is 17 years after September 11th? I would like to know what you think personally as well, if you don't mind. Ben from Boise, and he said he's a big listener and he listens every day. Well, Ben, we appreciate that. I'm going with the official story. But we'll open it up to people at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. To me, that was a day that could have, should have, would have been prevented. And if we have to, you know, what was it? Didn't they sell the Patriot Act to us that they would keep us safe? How in the world can we talk about keeping Americans safe when our borders aren't secure, right? That all of a sudden in Idaho, we're going to have to change our driver's licenses to get the star ID to make sure that we're all, you know, that we can fly planes, yet we let people into the country here and we give them IDs without any vetting. There's no consistency. How come the federal government knows what I had for breakfast or dinner. Very exciting stuff. Can zoom in to see when I'm watching, the replays of Pardon the Interruption through my television, but can't make sure that American citizens, that folks in the Treasure Valley are safe. That does lend some credence to the conspiracy theories. Let's get you to work safely and on time. It is. Oh, that was a shocker.
For anybody to challenge me on immigration, they don't know what they're talking about. And the question is, where have Tommy Alquist and Brad Little been on immigration? They haven't done any of the things that I have done, but they're sure spending millions and millions and millions of dollars attacking me on it.
There we have it. Congressman Labrador and Ray Amaya, on a personal inside note, the clips finally showed up a day later on my computer. Amazing. Anyway, speaking of Congressman Labrador and Dr. Alquist, Lieutenant Governor Brad Little will join us. He'll be coming up next hour. We'll get his thoughts on the state of the race and the allegations here by Congressman Labrador and others. Also, Dr. Alquist about Brad Little and whether or not he should be the next governor. It's getting heated. And of course, we've got the big ads and everything else. But the politicians love talking to us each and every morning.
When somebody's willing to spend that much money on attacking another individual, because they cannot stand on their own record. They have no record to stand on, and on whether it's immigration, whether it's spending, whether it's any issue that is important to the people of Idaho. I'm the only candidate who has a strong conservative record.
There you have it. So we'll talk to Lieutenant Governor Brad Little coming up. Also, she's running for Lieutenant Governor. Kelly Packard will join us, get her thoughts on the state of the race. Not a lot of buzz, and maybe it's the state of things in the state of Idaho, that we're doing stories on National Siblings Day yesterday, right? Yeah, look, it's better than doing murder stories, I suppose. It's better than doing crime stories. But National Siblings Day was a big story yesterday. And would you rather have that or hard-hitting news and talk about the issues that matter to you? So we'll find out. We'll find out why people are ignoring the lieutenant governor's race. A lot going on this morning. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.